Thanks so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. The fate of the Affordable Care Act is hanging on a Supreme Court ruling that could come out at any moment. Paul Strand explains why the case of King versus Burwell is about one little phrase, but why that phrase is so hugely important.
This case, King versus Burwell, is about a problem in the language of the Obamacare law. The people could get subsidies when they signed up with health exchanges established at the state level, or as the law says it, established by the state. But most states didn't create exchanges like Democrats thought they would. They didn't want to. Healthcare analyst Nina Aucharenko.
They were looking to see a way of kind of keeping more of Obamacare out of their state.
So millions of Americans signed up on the federal exchange instead, and the IRS decided millions of them could get subsidies. So the court's deciding if the word federal can be used interchangeably with the word state.
And whether or not those subsidies can be given in states that have a federal marketplace versus a state marketplace.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson warns if the court says no,
millions of Americans that are getting their Obamacare plans through a federal exchange will no longer be eligible for the subsidies. And that's going to create a lot of chaos, a lot of turmoil in people's lives.
If the court rules against Obamacare, then Congress, now controlled by Republicans, has to fix the language of the law to save those subsidies. It could just add a phrase and make it established by the state or federal government. But a ruling against Obamacare also gives these Republicans a chance to instead really tinker with or even replace a massive federal program many loathe.
Obamacare is just flat busted.
Representative Paul Ryan, for instance.
We're not talking about a ding or a dent or a fender bender or a flat tire. The whole law is a lemon.
The president suggests his urge to trash or tinker with Obamacare is the same as plotting to steal away health care or subsidies.
It seems so cynical to want to take coverage away from millions of people, to take care away from the people who need it the most.
But Republican Johnson's plan would let everyone keep the plans they now have and preserve most of the status quo until August 2017.
What that allows the American people to be involved in deciding the direction of our health care system in the 2016 election.
Republicans grouse that's too easy on Obamacare. The administration's upset Johnson's plan would kill the individual mandate, that penalty that forces almost all Americans to pay into the system even if they don't have health care coverage. Johnson laughs off the critics.
It's being attacked from both the right and the left, which I think pretty well proves it. I think I found that sweet spot of a very reasonable, very fair proposal.
This Supreme Court case has been just one more bad news or bad publicity moment for Obamacare.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
You like your current insurance, you keep that insurance. Period. End of story.
PolitiFact called that the lie of the year. And the assurance healthcare costs might be cut in half? Not so, they're going up.
We know why there's still more people opposed to the health care law than support it. It's because their prices are going up on their health care.
Obamacare has dramatically driven up the cost of health care. It did not protect patients. It didn't control the cost of health care either.
And now a court ruling that could throw the very shape, even existence of Obamacare back into open battle here in Washington. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Paul. The head of one of the most militant Islamic states in the world has escaped arrest in South Africa. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir is wanted by the International Criminal Court, but the South African government this morning ignored a South African court order to arrest Bashir and allowed him to leave their country. Our Gary Lane has more.
Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir was indicted in 2009 for committing crimes against humanity and genocide in Darfur. The International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant against him. But so far, the Sudanese president has remained elusive and careful about traveling outside of Sudan. This weekend, he was in South Africa, attending an African Union summit. Before arriving in the country, he received assurances from the South African government that he wouldn't face arrest. But a South African judge on Sunday ordered that Bashir not be allowed to leave the country. That brought outrage from the Sudanese government.
This court's decision does not have legal value. South Africa issued in the Public Gazette 10 days ago the decision of the African Union that African countries are not bound to any decision by the court.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said the authority of the ICC must be respected and Bashir arrested. Despite pressure from the UN Secretary General, the South African government ignored its own court's order and allowed Bashir to leave. Nonetheless, the Sudanese president is still a wanted man for causing the deaths of 300,000 of his own countrymen in Darfur and the displacement of at least 2 million. He's also killed Christians, closed churches, and waged holy jihad on them in South Sudan for more than 20 years. South Sudan is now an independent state, but Bashir still uses his influence to manipulate and control the people there. Bashir is also aggressively spreading militant Islam throughout Africa, and he continues to wage war and bomb innocent civilians in Sudan's Nuba Mountains. Gary Lane, CBN News.
America's military launched an airstrike targeting an al-Qaeda leader in eastern Libya Saturday, and the Pentagon believes it was successful. Mokhtar Belmokhtar is charged with leading the deadly attack on a gas plant in Algeria that killed 35 hostages back in 2013. The Libyan government says the targeted attack likely killed Belmokhtar and several others, and the strikes came after consultation with the Libyan government. Britain claims revelations by NSA leaker Edward Snowden has put its intelligence agents at risk. The government has pulled several of its operatives from the field for their protection. Security officials say China and Russia used Snowden's information to learn more about its intelligence gathering techniques, possibly even ways to identify spies.
We never comment on operational intelligence matters, so I'm not going to talk about what we have or haven't done in order to mitigate the effect of the Snowden revelations. But nobody should be in any doubt that Edward Snowden has caused immense damage.
Snowden's been living in Russia since he stole tens of thousands of documents from the NSA. He says he leaked information to alert the American people to intrusive intelligence gathering techniques. A majority of Palestinians in Gaza support firing rockets at Israel as long as they don't have open borders. But the same amount are not happy with the results of last summer's war between Gaza's rulers Hamas and Israel. The results of a new poll by the Ramallah-based Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research showed 63% of Gazans expressed dissatisfaction with achievements in the 2014 war compared to human and material losses. More than 2,200 Palestinians and 73 Israelis were killed, and reconstruction in Gaza has now been slow. Jeb Bush is slated to announce his run for president today. This makes him the 11th Republican hopeful to set his eyes on the Oval Office. The former Florida governor tells CBN News he's got a great record to run on when it comes to conservative values.
When I was governor, we created the first pro-life license plate to be able to provide counseling for people. We had the first, I believe, in the country, $2 million appropriation for crisis pregnancy centers. We regulated abortion clinics. We created a constitutional amendment to require parental notification for abortions. The Terry Schiavo case came during my time. So I have a pretty proven record of respecting life from the beginning to the end.
Bush is making the official announcement with a speech today at Miami-Dade College. The government is working on ways to identify people by their tattoos. The National Institute for Standards and Technology hosted a challenge for groups to come up with the most accurate software and algorithms for identifying tattoos. A computer scientist tells the Washington Post the main reason the government wants the IDs is to track down criminals. But a legal expert questions if the law has caught up with how image recognition with tattoos could be used, since people are being identified remotely without even knowing it. Operation Blessing is wrapping up its emergency relief operation in San Marcos, Texas. In the past few weeks, since floods destroyed communities, teams of volunteers have been helping residents clean out debris and to rebuild. In addition to bringing physical relief, teams also had the opportunity to provide spiritual comfort by praying with some residents. Residents have expressed their gratitude to Operation Blessing, and volunteers say they're honored to have been such an integral part of the relief effort.
I might not be able to rebuild people's homes for them or give them the financial funding, but I've got strength and energy to help the process along. And I just think it helps people heal when they know there's a lot of people out there willing to help them out.
Operation Blessing is now getting its equipment stocked and ready for the next deployment. Coming up, a summer camp in Bolivia is changing the lives of young people and introducing them to Christ. We're going to show you how. Very few Latin American youth get to experience the fun of summer camp, and Christian camps are few and far between. But the camps that do exist have set thousands of lives on a different course. Stan Jeter reports from a camp in Bolivia that has earned the admiration and support of teachers and parents alike.
When students arrive at the Monte Blanco camp in Bolivia, they embark on an adventure that touches the lives of over 5,000 junior high and high school campers every year. Christian camps like these are still uncommon in Latin America, especially camps with an emphasis on fun and games. The campus dates back to 1952, when New Tribes Mission established the Tambo boarding school for missionary children. Tim Ramsey attended Tambo in the 1960s, while his missionary parents worked with the primitive Ayore tribe. And today, as president of LATCOM Mission, Ramsey has taken his old mission school campus and turned it into one of Latin America's model Christian camps. Over the past 10 years, Monte Blanco has become a magnet for campers.
We use food, fun, and fellowship, which are really the three primary reasons any youth or kid goes to camp. They don't go for their spiritual needs or because, I have a driving desire to accept Jesus Christ.
The fun and fellowship include outdoor games and team-building competitions, all focused on a single objective.
Time they get off the bus until they get back on the bus to leave our facility, every activity they're in has a purpose, has a significance that is working together to draw them towards a decision moment, whether to accept Christ or to reconcile their lives with Him.
And change does happen as up to 300 campers at a time experience Monte Blanco's mixture of fun and spirituality. Berea Christian School is one of many schools in Santa Cruz that send students to Monte Blanco. Principal Samuel Correa says that a highlight for many of his students is the bonfire.
They really remember is going up the mountain. They remember that moment when they're on the mountain, at the bonfire, when they sing. Those are times they'll never forget, and they talk about all the time, because they say on that mountain, they talk to me from the Word of God.
The same message is reinforced during chapel and other camp activities. And when students make a spiritual commitment here, it doesn't take long for their families back home to notice the difference.
The parents say, "What's happened to our son? What have you done?" Because we see them changed, because they come and hug their parents. They come to tell them, "Dad, Mom, we love you. I love you." Or they come to ask forgiveness of their parents.
Changed attitudes also help improve school performance.
They are much more responsible, much more dedicated. They do their homework. They do better in their tests. They get along better with their teachers. So they have a better climate for fully developing themselves.
Other principals have told Ramsey of similar changes in their schools. One reported,
"Our grades went up. We saw a drop in drug use and rebellion in our schools. We actually witnessed the change, dramatic change of some of the worst youth leaders in our school who accepted the Lord at Monte Blanco and came back and influenced their own peers to a whole different way of living life."
The success of this Bolivian camping project has created new opportunities, motivating the Monte Blanco staff to take Christian camping on the road or up the river.
Up the Amazon to a small town where over 300 and some youth came together for a camping conference. And our staff ran a camp very similar to what we run here for them.
As Monte Blanco expands its influence, Ramsey and the staff hope that many more Christian leaders will develop camping programs as an effective instrument for transforming Latin America's youth. Stan Jeter, CBN News.
And up next, a revolutionary new treatment that's helping victims of trauma, strokes, and even autism. But is this therapy right for you? Find out when we return. It is a special treatment that uses something as common as the air we breathe. Lori Johnson shows us how oxygen can be used to help heal our bodies from even the worst of injuries.
It's hard to believe Michael Bean Black survived this horrific car crash.
18-wheeler cut me like switched lanes and made me turn, so I turned into the median, hit the median, and flipped 9 times. And I was ejected from the car.
And landed on his head. Even the doctors gave up hope.
After 3 days, when the doctor says we're going to take him off life support, and we says it's not going to happen. While he was in the coma, we put up a Beans recovery group on Facebook. We asked everybody that we knew for prayers, and they passed it on to everybody they knew, and we had prayers from all over the world. And I know that's what brought him out of the coma, and that we could bring him home.
Michael still suffered from severe injuries, including brain damage. Things turned around after he started getting hyperbaric oxygen treatments.
He couldn't talk, hardly. I mean, he'd say things, but they were things that what? You know? And they started him in the hyperbaric chamber, and it cleared him up amazingly. We just couldn't believe it, so we just kept bringing him back.
Hyperbaric oxygen therapy involves breathing 100% pure oxygen inside a pressurized chamber for about an hour to an hour and a half. We normally only breathe about 20% oxygen. Dr. Alfred Johnson says this supercharged oxygen is a natural healer.
With that pressure being present, then the blood vessel is fully saturated with oxygen so that the tissues get 10 to 15 times more oxygen depending upon what the pressure is. Therefore, you get the increase in the healing process and the cell recovery process.
When I first started, I would come here in a wheelchair and have to be wheeled in and get out and go on one of the chambers. And then I moved to a walker, and then I moved to a cane. But it helped my muscles, because my muscles are really tense, and it relaxed them.
After the first 40 treatments, Michael went back for 40 more a few months later. Costs vary from as little as $100 an hour on up. Insurance and Medicare sometimes offer coverage depending on the condition being treated.
When I first started, I had a bad case of insomnia and couldn't sleep. And then every time I came here, and after I got done with the chamber, I'd go home and fall asleep. My memory has gotten a lot better because I couldn't really remember. Like, I would do something in the morning, by afternoon I'd forget what I'd done. Now I have a pretty good memory.
There's no question that people see the health benefits of oxygen. Just a few years ago, oxygen bars were popping up across the country. But that's a far cry from what proper treatments like hyperbaric oxygen therapy can achieve.
Mike, are you okay?
And it's easy.
They just put you in this nice glass tube, and you get to watch TV, and your ears kind of pop because they put you under pressure. No, it's just like breathing regular air. There's no difference.
Consumers can buy portable hyperbaric oxygen chambers, but they typically deliver far less oxygen and pressure than these industrial-grade ones. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is used to treat conditions like migraines, carbon monoxide poisoning, and stroke.
So you see people that are having trouble with walking. They have much better coordination. They have more strength. And many people are able to get back to normal functioning or close to normal functioning post-stroke.
It's also used by people with burns, hearing loss, and autism.
We see the most response with people with speech problems because there's some deprivation of oxygen. The brain cells aren't working quite right with the speech, and they're able to help with speech problems and recovery.
Hyperbaric oxygen therapy may not be for everyone, but today Michael Black is in far better shape than he or his family ever dreamed possible since his near-fatal car crash. They believe this therapy has a lot to do with his recovery, so they plan to stick with it and hopefully see even more improvement. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
And I trust that prayer had a lot to do with his recovery as well. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Finally this hour, it is time for your Monday motivation. Remember this, your discomfort with where you are is God's quiet motivation for you to push forward to the next level. I know I've said this before, but it is certainly worth repeating. God never calls us to be comfortable. He calls us to be committed. Make this a marvelous Monday, and with God, you have the power to do just that. Well, that is going to do it for now here on CBN NewsWatch. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.